Okay, the other thing you're going to be asked to do is you're going to be asked to identify the intervals where a function is increasing or decreasing or possibly constant. Now here's the thing with increasing and decreasing. You may think that if an arrow is pointing up, then that function is increasing. But that's not the case, because increasing means that it has a positive slope. Decreasing is when there is a negative slope. So really we're talking about from left to right, am I going up or am I going down? And particularly here with this portion right here, you may look at that and say, oh, well, that's going up. But really, from left to right, that is going down. Okay, so as this thing is moving from left to right, I want to know if the slope is positive or negative. And as you consider that line over there, that is actually a place where this graph is decreasing. Although the arrow is pointing up, this slope is actually negative because it is going down as you go from left to right. So, the part that's increasing, let's just start with that. The part on this graph that's increasing is going to be this part right here. It's going up. So the question you want to ask yourself is, what is the x value where it starts going up, and what is the last x value that we know it to end at? Well, because of the arrow at the end, you pretty much should be able to look at this and say, you know what, this thing's going up to infinity. Okay, because it's just going to keep going forever and ever to the right. But where does it start? Well, it's an open point. It looks like right here is where it starts. So if I count over 1, 2, 3, it looks like this has an x value of 3. So because it has an x value of 3, that means that the increasing portion of this graph starts at 3 and goes up to infinity. Now the question of whether or not I'm going to put a parentheses or a bracket in front of it, well, that is open. And remember, when it's open, that means it's a parentheses. We do not want to include that point. All right? We'll come back to set notation. Decreasing. Decreasing is going to be this portion over here that, although the top of it has an arrow going up, the slope of this portion is going down. Now this thing is coming in from the left, and because of that arrow, it's essentially saying that this is going to go all the way down to negative infinity. A very poor infinity sign there, sorry. Let me get that out of there. So it's coming from negative infinity, and it comes all the way until we get to this point, which it looks like if I were to drop straight down, that's negative 2. Okay. Now that negative 2 has a filled in point, and a filled in point means that I'm going to use a bracket. So this function is decreasing, meaning it's going down from negative infinity in until you hit negative 2. And then the constant portion, well, that's just the flat line right in the middle here. That's right, sort of in between the two of these. Just be careful with your notation, because although we know it's going from negative, let me go with a different color here. Although we know it's going from negative 2 up to positive 3, on the left side by the negative 2 we need a bracket because that's a filled in point right here. Filled in point. And then the other part is going to be a parentheses because that is not filled in. So real quick, just for practice, just to see it again, when you're looking at set notation, all these are going to be using x's because we're dealing with the x-axis, left to right. In this case, we have a 3. It goes up to infinity. the x gets trapped in between, we put a less than and a less than, close it with a set, and if either of those were a bracket, then we would include an equal sign, which we don't have. Okay? For the second one, we have x such that, and in this case, we're going from negative infinity up to -2. We trap the x in between, we put a less than and a less than, I'm kind of running out of room here, and we're going to put an equal to over here with the -2 because that's a bracket. That would be your set notation there. And then lastly, x such that, I'm going to go from -2 up to 3, I'm going to trap the x, I'm going to do a less than and a less than, and the -2 is also going to pull the weight, it's going to have an equal to sign because of the bracket. Close the set. Intervals.